Good afternoon, St. Louis, and welcome in to Boots on the Ground. I'm Matthew Rocchio. This is STL Sports Central, and this is our weekly St. Louis City SC podcast. We've had to make a little bit of a change up here, unfortunately, but that does give us a chance to bring on one of the best young writers in St. Louis when it comes to covering St. Louis City SC. Please, everybody, welcome MLS Soccer and St. Louis Magazine's Justin Horneker to the show. Justin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for calling me young. I'm feeling good.
Yes, I am calling you young because you are a tad bit younger than me, but you're the one with the child and the family and everything. So young at heart. We both are, yeah. I believe. How about that? So check out Justin right there at the top, MLSsoccer.com, St. Louis Magazine. Follow him at Horneker Justin on Blue Sky and on Twitter. Before we dive in, Justin, just tell everybody about what you're working on right now. What can people expect if they go to STL Magazine or MLS Soccer and see your name?
Yeah, the latest thing for STL Mag, of course, we had just diving through the big moments of Luch Vanishul's tenure in St. Louis that obviously we'll talk about today is no more, but just kind of looking back at the 5 years and the big moment. I also, on my newsletter, Talking Soccer, the other thing I do, went a little more in depth than just like why this decision had to be made. And then MLS Soccer, I am a match night writer. So anything that happens on a match night, I am probably going to write about it. So
let's dive into something really quickly because you are talking about stuff on match nights. The MLS has had some controversial match nights. We will talk about Vancouver in a moment, but there was some moments at the Orlando City game just recently. Why is MLS World in a tizzy about that game?
There were some, controversial, I would say.
No, say it ain't so. Not in this league.
Crazy. Wild to believe. Yeah, and like the fact that it happens, like Miami and Orlando, for those of you that didn't watch it last night, there were a couple questionable penalty calls at the end, and then a no call on Angulo and Sergio Busquets. There's a big moment earlier in the match that doesn't get called, and it's a big no call. And Busquets later gets yellow.
He's played with Messi before at a different club before Miami, correct?
Yes, very famously. I believe everyone on Miami, I think, has played with him before. Anyway, is some interesting officiating decisions and very much on the mind in light of what happened in Vancouver on Saturday. And yeah, all people are asking for just a little bit of consistency in what VAR decides to judge on and what they don't.
Well, when big things like that happen, head to MLSsoccer.com and check out the match day writing from Justin Horneker and his colleagues over at MLSsoccer.com. We have some big news, though, from St. Louis City this week, and that, of course, was the dismissal, the parting of ways, if we want to get technical with the vernacular about it, on Monday afternoon of Lutz Pfannenstiel. On Tuesday, we then got to talk to Diego Gigliani, the president and GM of the club, about kind of what has been going on. How did this happen? How did it come to it? One of the things that originally came out as we were figuring out what was happening was the timing of this. It comes right after the end of the transfer window. So how much of this summer window was this into the decision-making? And here was president and GM Diego Gigliani when asked about that decision-making process.
It was not a reaction to a disappointing window. I would say that we have worked closely on this window together. We had the right support from ownership on what we wanted to do, and this window was a window to make some changes in terms of players that were occupying space on our roster and weren't able to get on the pitch enough, but also sign some players that started looking like the profile of what we want to evolve to. Players that are more physical, more adapted to our style of play, younger, better availability. And that's that first step in this squad reconstruction that we've done.
So, Justin, first of all, credit to our good friends over at Utes Media with that video from Tuesday afternoon. What was your reaction and the narrative, and your reaction to overall to the narrative about the firing being a reaction directly to this summer transfer window?
Yeah, I think it's not like it's more of a chronic reaction than an acute reaction. Like this isn't a reaction to say that whatever happened in the summer window was not enough, because I think it's clearly built with the future in mind. So to say that like they didn't do enough for that, Luch didn't do enough for like right now is a mischaracterization. But the fact that they're out of the playoff picture, it's not looking likely. They're at the end of that initial 5-year plan. I think as they are forecasting to the future and they're seeing that things aren't going in the right direction, they have high expectations from on the sporting side of things. And yeah, just time to make that move. And I think Diego's comments about availability really struck to me, because if you think of really what sinks Luch Pfannenstiel is that the big signings, some of the big signings that should have been key pieces just were never able to get on the pitch. And that's kind of the whole story.
To your point, if you had to boil down, why you think this move happens, I think it's the fact that what Diego's talking about, there were too many players who were chronically injured, who weren't available, and that was problematic. And that highlights maybe the biggest issue. I think also, not only in that quote, but there were other quotes as well, the utilization of the roster. I know that he says in a different answer that he doesn't criticize their use of the supplemental roster. We're not going to get 100% of the truth every time we ask questions. I think definitely the criticism of the roster usage has to be maybe the North Star if you're trying to figure out, why this firing happens. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And of course, if you're not getting results, the roster is the thing you fix. And I think if you just look at it, they entered the season, switched to the 2DP 4 U22 model, and then didn't fill out all the U22 slots. So I think there is a sense of just not utilizing all the roster space that you could have utilized. And I don't think it's anything that ownership thrust upon. I think Luch Pfannenstiel just had an idea of how he wanted to build his team, and that was not necessarily congruent with how MLS's roster rules work.
Part of me does think that there is some of Diego's answer to not wanting to seem reactionary for a club that, in hindsight, not in the moment, because if you remember the fan reaction in the moment, I remember the fan reaction in the moment, there was no one who was who was harping against the firing of Bradley Carnell in the moment. Most people were very happy about it, and it ended up being a bad move in hindsight. So I think there's part of this of not wanting to seem reactionary, because to me, everything we just talked about, you can highlight a senior roster spot being left open in the summer transfer window. So while your point, it's not a reaction, but I definitely think there were mistakes made in the summer transfer window that ended up being the straw that broke the camel's back. And at the same time, part of their rhetoric, because there's been so much about the ambition of this club, something for the first time ever, I'm starting to think that there were funds available or moves on the table that could have been made, and whether it was about a risk-adverse idea or a philosophy idea of another kind, moves weren't made that could have been or should have been in the eyes of other parts of the sporting front office and or ownership. Everything about their rhetoric tells me that this does have a little bit to do with summer, but only as a continuation of failures from the winter.
Yeah, and I think the league is kind of changing around them as well. I mean, that's you have to kind of keep
record-breaking transfer window.
And if you think of St. Louis spent, it might end up being $6 million by the time incentives are thrown in. And 3-4 years ago, that would have been a huge spending window for most teams in the league. But now it's a drop in the bucket, 1% of the overall transfer spend. So yeah, it is, I think, maybe a little bit of needing to recalibrate. And I think, if you are looking at how Luch Pfannenstiel operates, it is trying to operate in between the margins, trying to find deals that maybe just aren't there in MLS right now. And I don't think he utilized the domestic market well enough to kind of cover for those cracks. But you can point to a lot of successful moves he made too. And I think just combined with, like you said, some of the maybe lack of urgency, I think that's a good idea that you're saying, Matthew. And then obviously the Olaf Melberg hiring and firing, I think, is kind of the bigger thing that sunk him. And then just kind of seeing how the rest of the year played out. But Luch Pfannenstiel fired 2 managers. Rarely does a sporting director get to hire a third. And looking at the 5-year aspect of it, I think it was just time to move in a different direction.
We just mentioned it there, the MLS breaking their old transfer window record of $188 million in 2024. $336 million. They almost doubled it this year. As someone who's been watching this league, not just this team, over the last 3 to 5 years, what does it say to you that and maybe what do you think the undercurrent is? Is this the Messi effect? to this league taking a 2x or 1.7x jump in transfer spending?
Yeah, I think there's a couple factors. So if you can go on a journey with me real quick, I think it's one.
Let's take a walk. Let's do it. Beautiful day out there.
The international transfer market in general has kind of like ballooned as far as like transfer values go. I think that's a big piece of this, is why it's like such a huge record. But also, Lionel Messi comes. He shows that not only is it a good league to come into on the tail end of your career as a superstar, but also you're going to play competitive games also. And I think in the past, when you've seen these superstars come over, the Kakas of the world, that have maybe not taken MLS seriously enough, now they're getting a caliber of star that not only has global recognition, but also has enough left in the tank to like play spectacular soccer over the course of the season. So I think that helps. And then as the talent wise around the league increases, and teams have to catch up. And I think then it's just kind of compounds on itself when you're in a 30 team league, that like if you don't spend, if you aren't making these moves, if you aren't trying to get better, you're going to be completely left behind.
One of the other things that you asked Diego about was, does this mean a stylistic change? Obviously, when you have Lutz, and it was such a, it was so defined by Lutz, it was borderline gegenpressing, but it was going to be high press, it was going to be counter press, counter attack, all of these things. Does that style change with a change in SD? Maybe not, according to Diego Gigliani.
Is a great thing to do in moments like this. Yes, we should reflect on those things. I also think that the reflection in terms of, are we in a position where we are abandoning our style of play? I know we will not reflect at that level. We believe in the importance of having a style of play. We believe in the style of play and how it connects to the ethos of St. Louis, of being a hardworking, gritty, aggressive team. We want to maintain that intensity. Then it's around, are there things that have worked or not worked, and do we want to make some adaptations to it? That is for sure on the table, but we will not make radical steps backwards from our style play.
Did that surprise you at all, that answer?
No, I think I was just, more curious when you have a sporting director that's had his hands in everything. Like Leach Van Stiel was there at the start of the academy, was there with John Hackworth, developing the style of play that you see from the academy to the 2 team to the first team. So, like, in my mind, if a new sporting director comes in and they want to put their stamp on things, is that also on the style of play, or is that kind of an untouchable pillar of the club? And it sounds like it's a pillar of the club. But like, I don't have a problem with style of play. I was just kind of more wanting to understand if they look at the style, if they look at how the team is built, and if they think that's sustainable. And it sounds like it is.
Speaking of the way that the team is built, do you feel like this changes because we're going to talk a little bit later about Roman Burki, but let's just, as we're talking about this right now, do you see the Klaus options? Because it seemed like it was a no-brainer that it was going to get picked up if Lutz was in charge this winter. But the Klaus option, do you see that still being a gimme for St. Louis? Because they can take him down to a TAM. He's having such a strong season. Even that aspect maybe makes him sellable if they do keep the option. Do you still see João Klaus in 2026 with St. Louis City?
Yeah, to your last point, like even if new sporting director comes in, decides that João Klaus is not what we need, even though he is kind of the heartbeat of the team, the fact that there are transfer rumors and there are obviously interest elsewhere, even if it's intra-league, like there is a reason to pick up that option, even if you aren't planning on using him. But that's because you can get a transfer fee for him. Like he's an asset. You control his path from here on out. And I think enough people in that organization, there will be enough of a through line that João Klaus will still be here next year and still be a big part of the team. I think like he's a part of that leadership group. Big friend of Roman Burki, big friend of Simon Betcher, big fan of St. Louis. So I don't see him going anywhere.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's better for this team. He talked there about the style of the game relative to the St. Louis ethos. I've had this conversation with a lot of different people, and I very rarely agreed with them on their takes about it, including a certain MLS broadcaster.
Do you get in Twitter arguments about what St. Louis style soccer is? Has that happened?
I've gotten a couple. It's happened before. Because I think that's what's the word? Like I think it's kind of like the best fans in baseball thing, where it's like everyone thinks that their era has this super distinct style. Because
not to steamroll over you, but it's also not a thing. Like Luffy is Scott Gallagher. Like if we're going that way, like they play different styles. Like
Thank you. Thank you. And that's what I'm getting down to is like what is St. Louis style? Like, I understand the ethos aspect, the grittiness and things like that. Although I feel like hard work. I think different people quantify how that turns into soccer strategy. Like, and for me, the people who are like Red Bull soccer, or energy drink soccer isn't St. Louis soccer. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, they're just the idea of gegenpressing, I think, which is like, every team in modern soccer gegenpresses. It's not even really a style anymore. Like, you look at Man City, like they even gegenpress at times. Like, and they're trying to play a strictly possession brand of soccer. So I think there's a once of like wanting a traditional style, wanting a traditional way to play, but like soccer, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to roll with the changes, and the game's always changing.
And Critch talks about them being entertaining. I think that's one reason why, because I'm somebody who came to soccer a little bit later. I'll be honest, I didn't like it when I was a kid, probably because it was a lot of running and I hated running. But
I'll do it.
But what brought me back to soccer, in my teenage years was like Jurgen Klopp's Borussia Dortmund team, and that level of and seeing a heavy press, or a high line, a heavy counterattacking team in Leicester City pull off the greatest upset in club soccer history, playing with these similar styles to what St. Louis kind of was talking about. That's entertaining to me. And I think that's why it makes sense to keep with that style, because I think it's naturally entertaining. And now it fits with part of the roster build. If you're going to roll with Roman Burki, it's going to cost you a lot of money. That means you have a lot of money in the defense overall, including Roman Burki, Falou Fall, Henry Kessler. It makes sense to play a system that will naturally accentuate the offense, even if you don't have the talent, and puts a lot of the onus on super talented 1v1 defenders to make big plays. St. Louis has a really good, talented triangle of potentially, if what we're talking about later on happens, Roman Burki, Henry Kessler, and Falou Fall. They got to fill out the fullbacks a little bit, but it makes sense to keep playing that style going forward for a lot of reasons, including how the roster is built. And to your point, how it makes sense to continue retaining a lot of the big name players.
Yeah. And I think like, if you think of them using the summer window as still building for the future, like Sangbin comes in, like he's the player that's designed for the system they run.
Yes.
You look at him in Minnesota, like it doesn't work out because I think like he's a player that needs to stretch the field. And you saw that in the Vancouver game on that John Klaus goal of like how he can be utilized. And like Roman Burki wants to hit him on the run at some point. Like that is a play they've been trying so often, is Roman Burki gets the ball and just wants to boot it down with Sangbin running in stride and collecting it. So we'll see if that happens.
And also, I think even if you look at a couple other players on this team, like Marcel Hartl, people, I think it might have been Matthew Doyle who recently, wrote in kind of their write-up that at one point they added players who don't fit this style, but yet Marcel Hartl is the most well-traveled player in the MLS this year. He's the highest amount of distance covered in St. Louis. So maybe he doesn't have that aggressiveness as a box-to-box midfielder, but clearly he has the stamina and the willingness and the work rate to go box-to-box consistently, which is what you need in this system. That was one thing Olaf Melberg got right about this system, is you need a lot of box-to-box midfielders. He did get that right. We got to give him credit for that, right?
No? He didn't get the system right, but he did get that right. Yes.
He did get that right. There was a lot that went wrong when we look at what happened in Vancouver. We're not going to dive too much into the penalties and things like that, but let's have some fun, because I know people want to talk about some missed calls. I'm going to bring up a missed call right now that I don't think anybody else has brought up, Justin Horneker. And this was a play in the first half. It was kind of a bang play for St. Louis. And Sangbin Jeong got free for a 1v1 moment versus the goalkeeper. And I think he knew that he was probably dealing with an offsides, and maybe that's why he didn't get this ball across to Marcel Hartl. But I just wanted – I broke down two screenshots, and I just want to say I don't think Sangbin Jeong was actually – if he puts this goal away – there's a good chance that there's a VAR that goes in St. Louis's favor, because look where the defender is here. Look at this. Look at the straight line on the grass color. You can see the discoloration on the grass. Yeah. Sangbin, in my opinion, is clearly. Now his stupid hand is out here, and maybe he's got to fix that part of it. Maybe that's the dumb rule that still exists that gets him. But I think this could have been, if he puts this away. I have the line right here as well. I think this could have been something that goes in St. Louis City's favor if he either gets it past the goalie or he gets it across the face to a wide open Marcel Hartl. This could have been a huge moment in the game, and I can't stop thinking about it.
I think that's what's maybe most frustrating about this team is that they had these moments that just like haven't been going their way, but it's not necessarily that they're getting completely run over every match. They're just these little like fine detail pieces that they're missing. And I think that has to be the most frustrating aspect of being like so close to figuring it out.
One of the other things I did want to talk about, something that did go in St. Louis City's way, was that first goal, because a lot of the moments, Volum's crossing is really what we focused on, because he was putting in a couple before the goal. He put in a couple great crosses after the goal, and obviously his cross created the very first goal. But let's actually talk about what helped create that first goal. And this is just a few frames before all that offense starts happening with Hartl and Volum. And we'll get to what's happened there. But this pass by Burki was absolutely incredible. He was right here on, just off the midfield circle. He had a charging Vancouver player come to him, and he sliced this one on the ground completely past them. The fact that he was able to take out this defender right up here, or this player right up here, just next to Tomas Ustrak, and get it into Conrad Volum. This is an insane pass from Roman Burki. I'm not shocked by it, but that springs that entire attack.
Yeah, it's just such a nice play too, because there's also a moment like right after this where Songbin has like the recognition to understand that he's probably offside, so he doesn't make a play on the ball, and that kind of also allows it to be a goal. But the pass right to the middle from Burki to like just be right on the foot was so crisp, so nice. That's why he paid him the big bucks.
And here's what you're talking about right here. You see Songbin again. Maybe the right back here is keeping him on sides, but he, to best of his peripheral vision, sees that he's got two defenders in front of him, so he might be off sides. So he looks it out. But this is almost just like a frame later after they get the ball, and the crucial three people are highlighted right here with these arrows of where they make their runs, because the first run you get is going to be Marcel Hartl taking this outside, and he's going to get the wide pass here. You then get Edward Leuven making his run down the middle. That's what's put him in the goal scoring position. And then you get the late run from Volum underlapping, very important, because Hartl takes that wide spot way right. It's also important, I think, that Hartl is taking this ball wide right. A quick moment when everything's unbalanced. The guy who's usually on the left side is playing heavy on the right side. We're doing a lot of right side movement, which is rare for St. Louis City SC over the last 2-3 years, really almost their entire existence. They've been a left dominant team. So they're getting right with one of their left side players. So it's Hartl wide right, Leuven down, and then the underlapping move by Conrad Volum puts him in a perfect spot, pretty much from that elbow to put that cross in, which obviously gave them the first goal. Just a beautiful sequence in that Vancouver game.
Yeah, Rocchio, that's a good point too, because they usually do on the right side, they want to like hit as that weak side switch over versus like this, which is just overloading that right side. And then they maybe have the switch on the left if they wanted to go that route, but
they had it.
It was a nice like dynamic movement that you weren't seeing 2 months ago from this group.
That's a great point. We're going to see some of that later as we get into our city circuits in a little bit later. But one final thing I did want to look at. This was early in the game, and we got to talk about this moment, because this was problematic. Yeah. I mean, they a lot of corners. This I think was actually corner number 1 of what would be an 11 corner match from Vancouver, 1 for St. Louis City SC in this match, and they got a lot of good attempts. And this is the problem with St. Louis City SC too many times. This is early. These moments happen late. It's just, this is an inexcusable mistake. This cannot happen. You can leave a lot of people in white jerseys in this game wide open in the penalty box on a cross, or corner. It is an inexcusable mistake by Chris Durkin to take the bait and go with this white jersey in front of him and leave one of the greatest goal scorers in European history just completely wide open just off the penalty dot. This can't happen.
Yeah, Durkin, I don't know if he just doesn't have faith in that back line is going to like know their assignment, but like Durkin has to know that he's on Thomas Muller, who is like, just notorious for finding those little pockets of space where he can just pop in and score from. And that he doesn't score here is like so genuinely lucky, because Durkin just completely abandons him.
I mean, there's other moments too where they left people wide open. Mueller's running off the ball and no one's marking it. It somehow that didn't bite them in the ass. But one thing I talked about in the post game was the discrepancy, even if you take away the penalties. And since that post game, the Foot Mob has updated those discrepancies. And at the moment, at the end of the game, Foot Mob was only showing like an a non-penalty XG of like 2 even for Vancouver to like 1.2 for City. Now in an updated version, it's like 3.35 non-penalty to like 1.23 for City. Or maybe it's like 2.5. It's something like that. It's bad. Bottom line is I know that we've heard Roman Burki talk about the defense being better in this game. David Critchley in the post game talked about it being a little bit better, although he pulled that back a little bit. We'll hear from him at the end of the episode. This really wasn't a game where City deserved 3 points, really in any way, shape, or form. If you look at the momentum meters as well, they have 2 big spikes in the first half and then almost nothing in the second half. They did not do a good job of consistently marking all the extra runners that Vancouver was throwing at them.
Yeah, and it's really noticeable from like the 60th minute onward. And St. Louis have some good, like that's when they get a lot of good opportunities too. But I think it speaks to some of the conversations we've been having of just they can't find that middle ground of like when they open it up and they're looking for a goal, they also can't seem to close it down on the backside. And that is something David Critchley definitely needs to find a solution for.
We'll talk about that later on in the training takeaways. By the way, coming up in the second half of this episode, me and Justin were able to speak with City winger, now on the first team, Mykhi Joyner. Used to be called 59, but he's got that first name back because he's got that first team contract. He had his largest MLS appearance against the Vancouver Whitecaps. We talked to him about that, growing up, kind of how he got to St. Louis City after starting with St. Louis Scott Gallagher, his preference for the left side and all those things. So that's coming up in the second half. But let's get into our favorite segment. Let's have a little fun. This is our City Circuits, where we get under the hood and break down what's going on with St. Louis City SC. Now, this play that we're going to start with is the suggested one by Justin Horneker. So this was late in the game, and we'll set everybody up here so they can see what we're dealing with, make sure we got the right thing up. So here's where the play's at. Right at the bat, you can see St. Louis City. These guys are all off screen here. Pompeu, Bescher, and Joyner are off screen. You got Hartl at the midline, Vollum, Kessler. They don't really factor in this play very much, but I wanted you to know where they are. Morales is in his usual spot, always where he doesn't have to run too much. Baumgartel is just letting off a pass to Edward Leuven, where obviously St. Louis City is in possession. Orozco at the left back spot. Edward Leuven's one of the big guys we're going to watch here. Hartl's one of the big person we're going to watch down here on the left side. And we're just going to let this roll as we transition over to our graphics here. And so what's going to happen here, it's a short pass up to Leuven, and then Leuven's going to turn, get upfield a little bit. You see Hartl open it. And this is where things get crazy. Because let's go back to a screenshot here. Where's the pass that he's like? Yeah. We know he makes the pass, Justin, but us mere mortals, let's stop this moment. Look where he's at. There's a guy on his back. Where's the pass he makes here? How does he do this?
2 other guys closing in on him and like potentially a fourth, and he's going to just instinctively know that Hartl is there for the outlet. And like, I want to talk about this because like what Leuven does here just to absorb this much pressure, like this is just an otherworldly play to not only like bring the defenders in, but then to like hit Hartl and just spring him forward. Like it's not even that he's finding Hartl as the outlet; he's finding Hartl, springing him forward, and that's going to create this opportunity.
Just an insane pass. This defender right between Leuven and Hartl moves one step to his left. And just because of that, Leuven's able to just hit an absolutely insane pass from this angle. And but again, 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders are about to converge on Leuven, and he's somehow going to find this angle to open up this pass. We go back to the graphic. He gets it to Marcel Hartl. And by the way, you thought we were done with crazy sick passes. No, we're not, because Marcel Hartl is going to step into one with
whole play was great.
the outside top of his right foot to a running Celio Pompeu, who, as he's about to kick this is one frame before he steps into it. His right foot is back. It's about to step into, again, a top outside of his boot pass. That's where Pompeu is, and he plays him completely into the open. Another insane pass in this sequence.
Yeah, and he just hits it with the outside of his foot, curls it right into Celio's like running path. And it's a very good save from Tekoka because this should have been a goal. But yeah, it's something that, looked like a broken play, but it was very much like exactly what they wanted to do, which was absorb that pressure and then turn that into a quick transition movement. It's kind of like picture perfect of this is what they want to do. And you can see it almost work out here in a pretty crucial moment.
Yeah, there's the Hartle's going to hit that run. Pompeu is on. Hartle's going to hit that pass. Pompeu's on the perfect run where he needs to, and then he's going to make a little magic. He gets this cutback. He's able to get the defender out in front of him. He's got Bescher on the backside, but he tries to go skinny post. I can't blame him for that one. But just going back to let's go back to this moment here with Edward Leuven. Just this, and think of how he gets there. It's a simple pass off from Timo Baumgartel. He turns upfield, and as soon as you converge on him, he makes it's like Steve Nash back in the Suns days. It's just the perfect play every time. And then again, he connects with Hartle. This is, to your point, something to build upon going forward, because this is the spine of this team. Edward Leuven, as your deep playmaker, gets it to your forward playmaker in Hartle, who gets it to hopefully next year one of your young attackers who can make something happen. And they almost score a goal because of it. This, to your point, this is what 2026 could be if everyone's healthy.
Yeah, and I think when you think of at the start of the year when Lutz was talking about City 2.0 and the team being more comfortable with possession, this is kind of what they mean. It's like you have the ball, Vancouver's sitting off, they want you to possess, they want you to break them down. So give to Leuven. Leuven's going to invite you to come try to break him down, and then he's going to spring the transition opportunity forward.
Sorry, keep going.
No, it's that's exactly what they've been trying to do. So I just wanted to point this out because it does seem like something that Critchley can go back and kind of point out as, okay, something's happening, something's building.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of times where City, because look how unbalanced with the positional labels I put on there. Look how unbalanced Vancouver gets. And every time City would get unbalanced like this and put both of their two pivot middies over on one side, teams would find ways to beat them and get easy shots. So the fact that City's finally able to show that when other teams do that to them, they can do what teams have been doing to them, which is break it apart, get through it, and get quick attacks. That's a big thing. In addition, I know it's small, but I tried to show it too. I loved the little switch with Pompeu and Bescher, because they're both pressing those center backs. But if you notice, they start Pompeu's on the right side, Bescher's on the left, and what they do halfway through here is that they actually do a little loop here, and I think that kind of puts the center backs on their back heels, and maybe why Pompeu, despite the fact that he seems to be covered here, is able to get so much space from that Hartel pass. It's the little things like that we never really look at that show you that I know people aren't big on Simon Bescher. I know Celio Pompeu's struggling, but sometimes you got to watch these players do things that show you they do have the soccer IQ. They do have that feel on the field of how to make these kind of plays happen. They're not having great seasons, but again, there is something on this roster to keep building on.
Yeah, and this movement wasn't happening at the start of the year either. So to see the growth of some sort of dynamic play happen.
It's a huge thing for St. Louis City SC. One thing I do want to go to, we've talked about how you can see the similarities across the pyramid. And one thing that we talked about with John Hackworth on this podcast a few weeks ago was the propensity of City to switch around their fullbacks and their center middies. And not just positionally, like Mykhi Perez, who's a center midi for this team, who was also playing right back. You've seen it with Conrad Vallum. He plays right back, he plays center midi, and Tyson Pierce, right back and center midi. We've seen it with a lot of different players. Akil Watts, another guy, plays fullbacks and plays midi. But also, as we're seeing here, as I'm highlighting with these positions being thrown out here, they also like to, and because they do that stuff, they do these things, which is when the player is playing right back, they will add them into the midfield to give them an overload in one way or another. This time their overload is putting, 5 people into the attack, whereas it could be putting 4 people into the central midfield or 3 people into the central midfield. It gives them these overloads. And this is one from City 2, kind of showing you how we see how they've done this a lot at City 1, but this is how they do it with City 2, and this is Tyson Pierce. And I just think this is a great showing of how this team plays the same style across the pyramid. I think that's so much fun here. So again, the person we're going to be watching here is Tyson Pierce. He is the right back in this formation, but he is playing inside as they have the ball. The center back has it. Let's kill that sound there. And they move it up here. You can just see Tyson Pierce moving up. So right here, before he gets the pass, here's Tyson Pierce. He's moved up in this absolute just crazy amount of space, because this is what you can do when you take a guy out of position and put him in a spot that the defense isn't expecting him. He's going to find space that the defense isn't prepared. There's a free man right here in sky blue, but he's overloaded a double, and now there's no one who's able to play with Tyson Pierce. He's able to go from here. He's going to pick this ball up, dribble into some open space, and he's going to find a pretty good pass of his own. But the big thing is, watch how he continues his run. This is Tyson Pierce right now continuing his run. This is the right back on this team, started deep in the center in center midfield, and now look where he's attacking. Look how dangerous he's becoming for St. Louis City. Look at the space that he has to run onto. This is why formation, I think, is too blown up too many times, because you have to be able to attack teams in different ways with all of your players at different times.
Yeah, this is actually something I think City 2 has done better than the first team this year. Just like, especially with Tyson Pierce and with Mykhi, of how they're used kind of floating in centrally. And I think like they definitely do it more often than the first team does. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it leads to moments like this where you can build those overloads centrally that you maybe like haven't been able to do it. If you think of like all the times earlier in the season where the midfield was just, you couldn't connect between the back line and the attack because the midfield was so overrun, and like something like this where you can, again, to your point, just more force the numbers, essentially force a talented right back who's good with their feet, who can open themselves into space and then connect that play forward.
Yeah, and obviously watching a guy like Tyson Pierce, who's one of your most talented prospects, make this kind of play, that should also get you excited. Again, we're doing a little bit of a youth pivot as well. We got Mykhi Joyner coming up later, talking about Tyson Pierce. Our next clip is going to be talking about Brendan McSorley. But there's one other thing I also do want to focus on, which is the backside and the other side of the coin in this kind of play. Because a lot of the times what happens is when you're overloading another team offensively, that means there's a good chance you're going to be out of position defensively. Mm-hmm. So they don't have any good, the clinical passing isn't here in this play in the final third. The turnover kind of bounces towards the opposing team here for St. Louis City 2. And now look at how much space that Tyson Pierce has to cover as he gets back. Now, thankfully, Sporting Kansas City 2 immediately recycles the ball and doesn't press it, but you just see how much space he has to cover and how daunting this can be. So there are the benefits, there are the pros, but this is why when we talk about maybe fullbacks in this system, we have to be very wary of where was he required to be 5 frames before getting beat? Because if he was all the way up in the attacking position and somebody turned it over in the midfield, that's not the fullback's fault necessarily. He was doing his job, doing this inverting into the midfield. But this, and so this can kind of show the backside of it. But I do think the pro side from the first half is more important. But the other side is also extremely important when we talk about the balance for this team, offense and defense.
Yeah, you need to have a player that's rangy enough to be able to kind of make that run backwards and like still get in position or maybe even catch up to the ball. Like I think that's where like a center back pair of like to go in the first team again, like Fall, Henry Kessler, I think together will work pretty well just because like Fall is so just rangy. Yes. He can make up so much space. And I think Kessler is pretty similar in just so that fast. If they're out of position, if they're pushing forward, they can retreat and get back and maybe break up that play or be in the spot that you can advance forward. And I think that's something that they have been missing for the entire time they've been a team.
Our final video for our City Circuit segment. This is what I'm going to call Meathead Magic. Meathead, by the way, if you don't know, is John Hackworth's nickname for Brendan McSorley. And he said he's coming from a very loving position when he gives him that nickname. But Brendan McSorley had a big game against Sporting Kansas City 2 for St. Louis City. And I want to break down a quick little sequence that I think is fascinating for him. And you said something earlier in the pod that I think is perfect. You talked about how Sangmin Zhang is the perfect right wing for what St. Louis City likes to do because he can get down the right wing, he can play in service, he can be that long ball that you said from Burki down the right side, but also at the same time, there's a lot of the game where both off the ball as a pressing striker and as a secondary striker in the offense, he gets up there as the second most primary goal scoring opportunity player for St. Louis City. Brendan McSorley is a 9 who has been moved out to the right wing. So for me, watching him on this play was absolutely huge, because you can see right now, here's the positional breakdown for St. Louis City 2 again in this Sporting Kansas City 2 match. Here's Brendan McSorley with the ball. He's playing this right wing, and you can already see both of the fullbacks have underlapped above their wingers. You got Jay Reed here above Matty O'Kidd, and Tyson Pierce, always doing what he's doing here, is actually above Brendan McSorley. So what we're going to see from Brendan McSorley here to start off this game is actually he's going to whip in across from the right side. Again, this is a player who's usually a striker whipping in across from the right side, playing the one half of what they want to see from their right wings. By the way, no one gets on the end of it, but that's a damn good cross. I mean, look at where he's got 2 players, and this ball bounces right there from Brendan McSorley. That's a damn solid cross from Brendan McSorley. And then here on the back end of the play, look where Brendan McSorley is, by the way. The ball's landing there. Brendan McSorley's right here at the very top of this play. Watch how Sangbin/Klaus he does on this play, because watch how much he's going to move and get right back into the position he needs to be again as one of the secondary goal scoring options from that right wing spot. Look at the way he gets right into the box, finds his position. Kid's got a chance for a cross. Look where Brendan McSorley is. Perfect back post position. He's striking against everybody. See where the layout is again of all these positions. Mateo Kidd is the left wing. They got 3 players here. Yaskalainen is the striker. Mykhi Perez was actually playing up as the 10 this game. And then who's already got back into the attack, despite the fact that he was one of the deeper players just about 5 seconds ago? It's Brendan McSorley. He's going to be attacking that back post. Mateo Kidd's going to see it there, puts it in the air. Brendan McSorley wins the header. Perfect ball to Mykhi Perez. He gets the Tilly on the goal there for Perez. Just, if you can't ask for more from a guy who has moved positions to then do everything you need from both the winger, striker, and midfield parts of that right wing position. It was a great game from Brendan McSorley. He has grown so much in the last 6 months.
He really has. Like, if you think back to like his first couple of games last year and getting his feet underneath him, and then even the improvement from the start of last year to the playoff run, and then to then take another step over the past 6 months, like you said, like he really has stepped his game up. Like, yeah, I do wonder like what it would take at this point for him to get a more extended first team look, but obviously he was on the roster for the Aston Villa game, so it's like clearly they value him, and like, yeah, he's done a lot of good stuff this year.
Well, let's just say there might be a certain change in the front office that may benefit him, because go back a couple weeks when we interviewed John Hackworth on this podcast. He called Brendan McSorley one of the highest potential players in this organization. He talks about how just because a player is a 3rd-round draft pick in the Super Draft, you can't just ignore the potential they have. You can't just assume that player isn't a high potential player because they were a Super Draft player who's 24 years old. He was glowing about not just the current skill and growth of Brendan McSorley, but just the potential. And for John Hackworth to talk about potential in that way, it meant a lot to me but now potentially one of the guys who's making the football decisions until they get the actual guy in here. I wouldn't, it's not crazy to think Brendan McSorley has a role in 2026 on the first team.
Definitely not crazy. And yeah, I think like if you just think of the work City 2 has done in developing players, it speaks to how important it is to have that team up and going. It speaks to how important almost Next Pro has really become in terms of like being that development arm. Because where would, like, if City comes in before Next Pro is a thing and they have to field like a USL team or whatever their reserve team is, you're not getting this level of reps and care and just like developmental through lines that you have with the 2 team and the first team, and having similar schedules and having similar travel patterns and all the ways that the 2 teams are interconnected. And I think it just helps a player like McSorley, who not only gets to have a lot of playing time, he gets to train with the first team every once in a while, he gets to kind of mingle and show off his skills. And I think he's also a player that's very receptive to criticism and things he needs to work on.
Do you think the academy system for St. Louis City has gotten some undue, undue, because I think it's too early, because we've seen some, rankings where people are saying they're not developing players fast enough, but you look at Mykhi, You look at their ability with some of their super draft picks, Tyson Pierce, Mykhi Perez. You look at all of those factors that guys like Alex Junt, a 15-year-old, just got called up to City 2. Mateo Childs, Eddie Childs won the U15 MVP and just got called up to City 2.
MLS next MVP. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I really think that those rankings and the criticisms are too early. This team, for what they're doing, is really putting together a solid pipeline going forward.
And it's also a team in a city that has 3 MLS Next academies. That's something I think about too, when like some of those articles are written up talking about St. Louis is not having enough talent to fund their academy, but there's so much talent in this area that there are 3 like pretty high level academies, even more, but 3 in that MLS Next system that like are all putting out very good players. And if St. Louis don't have the COVID year, like they're not missing, there are a couple players that went to the draft that year that would have probably been wound up being St. Louis Academy players. So like
Schultz, right?
Schultz, and then Patrick Schulte, and then Jack Mayer also. Yeah.
Oh, Mayer would have been there too. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and that's in that same group. So, or at least like would have been easier for them to get a hold of, right? And I think it's very short-sighted of the talent that's in the pipeline. And obviously we're Homer, so we maybe see it as not as non-biased as maybe should be. But like I look at how that U15 team played this year, U16, and the success that they had, even though it hasn't necessarily turned into first team minutes. I think you look at that, you look at the how City 2 are primarily a team of some draftees, but a lot of players that were promoted from the academy. And
has any academy team struggled? I mean, the tournaments, for up and down the pyramid, the tournaments they go to, the leagues they're playing in, they're all there. I mean, the numbers and the actual, success they're churning out year to year has been extremely impressive over the 4 or 5 years that it's existed. And I think another part is, and I expect this to be a huge thing, it was a big Lutz thing. One of the big reasons I was a fan of Lutz was the idea of anybody playing anywhere of any income level can become a part of this team if they have the talent. And that is an ethos that will take long to root itself in a sport that has become so money-based. But I think it will take hold. I think 10 years from now, you'll get kids who were 6 years old in 2021 who maybe got chances to try out soccer when they were 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 that they never would have gotten without St. Louis City. And so those kids are going to be in the pipeline in 10 years that aren't in the pipeline now for that age group because St. Louis City wasn't here and kids weren't getting non-pay-for-play chances at the same level.
Yeah, and I think it just not being a mature pathway also hurts because they see that, especially earlier in the season when it was players that were over 24 that were primarily getting the minutes. Like you look at that and you think of like the pipeline being stuck, but it's more just circumstance of like if Mykhi Perez has a better year last year, if Birmingham is a better team last year, then he's maybe in the first team mix more, then maybe perception's a little bit different. But the fact that there hasn't been a homegrown in the starting lineup for majority of the season, like I think that colorizes because if you look at I'm thinking of teams with good academies, like of course Philadelphia, but also Seattle. Like Seattle have a really sneakily good academy of how they can use those players in positions of need and always have players coming through at 16, 17, 18. I think that is what they need to be striving for.
And even to that point, as we kind of extrapolate the youngest players, the youngest player on the senior roster before Mykhi Joyner was promoted was Jake Girdwood Reich, who also wasn't getting a lot of playing time despite again being 20 years old and one of the youngest players and having a $800,000 reported price tag next to his name. He wasn't even playing too. So it wasn't even just the homegrowns. They were having a really large problem finding minutes, despite the minutes were available. They were having a really problem trusting and pulling the trigger on playing some of their youngest players. And to all our points about this being a young academy, you needed to hit on the 20-year-old that you were willing to spend big money and get from a foreign country. And while he's had some good moments, that 20-year-old in GJR hasn't hit for big minutes. And that's maybe kind of exacerbated the fact that the actual homegrowns haven't been able to make an impact yet.
Yeah, and I think that narrative changes. Like, I think Tyson Pierce is just as close to a sure thing as you can say, like in an MLS setting. So I think, like within the next few years, when the first crop of homegrowns officially like graduate to the first team, and then I think the group underneath them has the potential to be even more impactful. And once those players start coming through and start being regular contributors, then that narrative starts to go away. But until you show it, we can sit here and talk about how talented these players are, but until they actually have that like genuine contribution.
Last point I will say, the people who think that the chances that Mykhi Perez is like a city player, like as a career, the people who think that like that's dead because of last year, you're not watching him at City 2 this year because he's grown a lot physically. He's obviously grown a lot as a soccer player. He's going to be I think he's on the path to being at worst a very solid MLS pro.
Yeah, and I think like Lutz talked about it when Mykhi went on loan, and that they wanted him to kind of experience being out of the system. And if like, I think I've talked a lot about how it went last year. And I think if the Birmingham Legion are in a better position and they're not bad down the home stretch to where they are prioritizing their own young players and not the players in on loan, then maybe things are different. But because Mykhi goes out on loan, then over the back half of the season, sees his playing time drop drastically, has to come back and kind of like reestablish himself, reestablish his confidence. And Next Pro is a step down from the championship as far as like quality goes. But if you look at not just how he's playing, but how he's playing in different positions, he's playing well as an attacking midfielder, he's playing well starting out at right back, and just like this flexibility that he now has that I don't think he had 2 years ago when he was an 18-year-old breaking through and winning the Hometown Hero Award.
There you go. Let's close this one out with some notes from training. St. Louis City, we spoke to David Critchley and Roman Burki in the pregame, looking forward to this game against the Houston Dynamo. Before we dive into the audio we have, you did get a chance to ask David Critchley about facing off against the Dynamo. They faced off against him, specifically David Critchley, St. Louis City, a few weeks ago. The Dynamo have had a very roundabout, up and down roller coaster season, not nearly as bad as St. Louis City, but it's had some rough spots as well. What are your early thoughts on this Houston Dynamo matchup?
Yeah, I think this is the game where if you're frustrated by how Chicago went, you're frustrated with how Vancouver went, like this is now like a winnable game. You're back at home where you play better. You've been playing better. You're playing a team that is struggling, that like is like the game in Houston was 1-0. And if they are able to find a goal, like it's a much different conversation. That the attack is working much better at this state than it was then. So now it's just about, if you're finally waiting on when to put that full picture together, this is the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's get to David Critchley talking just the other day. This was him kind of breaking down what we've been talking about a lot on this podcast, which was the balance for St. Louis City. The offense has been improving, but the defense, every time the offense pushes forward, the defense is almost always liable to allow a goal on their side. How can they fix that balance? How can they get more balance? Here was David Critchley after training just the other day.
Offense, let me see here, 2, 3, 4. We've scored 7 goals in the last 3 games. So something is clicking with the ball. We're creating chances. We're scoring some good goals. We're also leaking by far too many, in my opinion, on the other side of the game as well. So we try to find that balance. To add on to that, right now I will choose the best 11 that I think can win the football game, and I'll continue to do that untold otherwise. But my main focus is, from now till the last game of the season, is trying to win a football game, and doing it in a manner that I think is the best for short-term success, i.e. the immediate result, but also playing a system and a style that I think will give this club also long-term success. That's my main focus, and that's all I can really probably say on that part of it.
So he was asked in the context of choosing his starting 11 for this game, but I just thought the balance talk from Critchley that it has been so important. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the biggest thing for St. Louis City going forward in finding that defensive balance without losing themselves on offense again?
Yeah, I think it's just staying anchored. Like, I think that's the biggest thing, where like they haven't maybe been positionally disciplined enough so that when they push forward, when they get in that attacking space, if they turn the ball over, if they lose the ball against play, then all of a sudden like players aren't where they need to be to stop the attack going forward. And also a lot of times on set pieces, on corners that they've given up, that positional discipline, I think, comes in as well, where players are either drifting into positions they shouldn't be in, or not.
Do you mean? Give me one example, Justin.
Yes. Or not marking Thomas Mueller for some reason. I think that's my big takeaway, is that they have had trouble and historically they've had trouble with this, of being able to crank back down the tempo after they expand themselves going forward. I think Critchley has talked about that as well, of just when they're going for the win, like they haven't necessarily had the luxury to then be as stable at the back as they want to be, but then also just having that positional awareness to not be banging forward into the final third when you should be in the defensive midfield.
Yeah, it's going to be really big to see this defense with both Henry Kessler and Falou fall for real. How much can that just solidify everything on the back end? Because again, I know the big thing from the Vancouver game is the penalties, but they were getting opened up on a fairly regular basis by that Vancouver offense. Specifically, and to your point about presence of mind and staying focused, it always seemed to be, if Vancouver was pushing with 6 and they risked pushing together with 7, or pushing with that seventh guy was going to get an open shot because they were just overloading in the right areas and City couldn't make them pay on the other end. Houston is not nearly as dynamic as Vancouver. So I don't think City will have to, if they take a 1-0 lead against Vancouver, I think the plan was clearly to, if we take a 1-0 lead, try to get a 2-0 lead in transition on the counterattacks. Let's stay back a little bit. Let's keep numbers behind the ball, and let's attack on the counter. I don't think they're going to have to do that against Houston. If they do take a lead, they'll be able to play a little bit more open. This might not be the best example, but play open, take some risks. If the ball gets behind Padelford or Vollum, or whoever the hell starts at fullback, I want to kind of see if Kessler and Fall can win as much as we think they can in strained moments.
Yeah, I'm very interested, because that would have been the starting pair Critchley kind of talked about today. That would have been the starting pair last week if Fall's visa was physically there in time, which it didn't arrive, which is, I'm not sure, is the most frustrating feeling in the world for
oh my God,
for the PR staff. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what that looks like and to see how that kind of ranging is, because they both are very athletic. They both can range forward and still get back into position from what we've seen from them so far. And they can both spring a pass forward. Obviously, that is one of Timo Baumgartel's strengths too, but not as much the ranginess.
Yeah, can't wait to see both their passing from the back end combined with Burki's. He's going to be pretty special. Speaking of Burki, we want to see him here going forward. One of the big questions a lot of people had, obviously, the relationship, we talked about it earlier, with Lutz and these big name players, with Burki, with Leuven, with Klaus. How is it affecting the negotiations going on with Burki and his contract right now? He spoke about that in training. A very short, succinct answer, but if you're a St. Louis City fan, it should give you a little bit of confidence moving into the offseason.
It was the main person that I was talking to about the situation, but in the same time, right after we got the information about Lutz, Diego called me and said he assured me basically that we will continue the talks that we had the exact same way. And so I'm not worried, and I don't think I should get distracted because of that, because I believe in what Diego says.
He also said he loves playing at Energizer Park for these fans. And so I know a lot of these things, you don't always have to take them. You have to take them with a grain of salt, I should say. But the fact that one of the biggest potential red flags with making the move when they did on Lutz was clearly covered up in a very professional and expected manner by Diego, that should give St. Louis City fans some confidence going forward.
Yeah, and I think Burki is not a man to mince his words. Like, he's very open about his feelings, and he's earned that right with where he is in his career, and I don't get the sense that he would ever kind of BS that answer. And I think he seems to really enjoy being in St. Louis, and it really sounds like that if it's not here, it'll be in another league. But this press conference, I think if you were on the fence, if you're like concerned about what it meant about Roman Burki re-signing, you'd feel pretty good about it afterwards.
That wraps up this breakdown section of the podcast. In just a few moments, we'll be joined by Mykhi Joyner. We're going to talk to him about, obviously, the call-ups, his big goal moments down at St. Louis City 2, how he got to St. Louis City. But that, again, wraps up the breakdown moment. Justin, thank you so much for joining us on Boots on the Ground today. Obviously, you're going to be here for the Mykhi Joyner interview. Your thoughts going into this Houston match, just any final thoughts you have, Vancouver, Houston, Lutz, anything else?
Yeah, I think it'll be good. I think the fact that there isn't really necessarily a pressure on them right now opens things up to look into the future of how they can build off it. I also think it's been interesting that Critchley has said after the Chicago loss and after the Vancouver loss, that it was either go home with 3 points or go home with 0. Like that draws were not an option because the math just didn't work out. So I thought that was interesting because it really maybe paints some of the result of that if it's a different scenario, if they can play it safe a little bit more, that maybe things turn out different. But yeah, they're going for it, and at least it's exciting.
Mykhi Joyner up next. Make sure you check out Justin Horneker. There's a lot of CHs and Js in there. Check out Justin Horneker, MLSsoccer.com, St. Louis Magazine. Give him a follow at Horneker Justin on Blue Sky and Twitter, and also here on STL Sports Central. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell button. Make sure you're always going live with us, and check us out at STLSportsCentral.com. That's Justin Horneker. I'm Matthew Rocchio. Now, coming up next on Boots on the Ground, it is St. Louis City SC winger Mykhi Joyner. Half of the podcast, Matthew Rocchio, joined, of course, by MLS and City writer for MLS.com and STL Magazine, Justin Horneker. And we're joined today by the newest player for St. Louis City SC, making a lot of waves, the young man, Mykhi Joyner, obviously been in the program for a long time, but newly added to the supplemental roster of the first team. Mykhi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And again, congratulations. Of course, it was just not too long ago, just under a week, when you were added to the supplemental roster. Obviously, you played your 6 appearances that you were able to play with the off roster, so a move was kind of in the works, but I'm not sure how surprising it was to you. But take us through whether it was on the 21st or the 20th, when you found out that you were getting moved up and you'd be able to play the second half of this MLS season. What was that like? How did you find out?
Yeah, so basically I got asked to train with the first team throughout the week. I said, okay. I was super excited. And then Coach Hack came up to me, told me to go to the office, the first team office, and then they had congratulated me, telling me I'm on the roster and that I'd be traveling to Vancouver. So I was super excited to go call my mom and tell her that I had made the roster and that I'd be playing this weekend in Vancouver. So super happy.
And also, we talked to John Hackworth just a couple weeks ago on this podcast, and one of the things he told us is that everyone was still calling you 59 because that's the number that was on your jersey when you played for Scott Gallagher, and so you've gotten your first name back. Has that been different around the organization so far?
I mean, a little bit. People still call me 59 because I think it's just a funny joke, and I'm honestly used to it, so it's pretty funny. Hack still calls me 59 sometimes, Mykhi, but it's all just, I think it's kind of funny. I kind of like it, to be honest. So
I was gonna say, you got the agreement though. He said you get called up, you're Mykhi now, not 59 anymore. So I think everyone else can get away with it, but if that's Hack's rule, you got to remind him every time it's Mykhi now. Sorry, Coach.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Justin.
No, Mykhi, yeah, happy to have this moment talking with Critchley last week ahead of the Vancouver match and talking with Eddie Leuven as well. They're talking about just your growth this year. And obviously we saw the numbers from last year where you're the teenager with the most goals scored in MLS Next Pro. But this year, taking a step forward in your game, what do you feel like has kind of crystallized for you this year specifically in order to get this call up and be involved?
Yeah, good question. I honestly think it's really off the field. I think it was maturity. I think it was growing as a human off the field. Being a better person to everyone else in the facility, how I can help even the younger kids on the field as well. That were, I was in their shoes when I was younger as well. So I think it's just maturity, to be honest with you, and learning from the older players like Edu, Celio, just the key players of the team, and just taking in notes and seeing what I can put into my game as well, and then trying to put it together.
Does it feel like there's a bit of a responsibility there as the first one to be kind of pulled in this year to kind of set that trail?
I mean, to be honest, I don't really think about that. I just think about going out there, having fun, playing my game, and hoping the team win, honestly. So.
Nice.
We focus a lot of the fans, and we as the media, we focus a lot on the dribbling, obviously the goals. I got the numbers down right in front of you, the 14 goals this year, the 16 last year for City 2. We focus on those offensive aspects of the game, but you obviously, you're a growing player, 18 years old, you're still rounding out your game. So right now for you, what are the main focuses that you're trying to, better in your game?
Yeah, I would probably say when receiving the ball, if I can just not killing the ball, just keep going at my defender, first touch forward, making my defender more off balance, and trying to see the field of how I can play a ball better to my teammates or help them get into a better situation in front of goal. And probably another defensive one would be tracking back a little bit better, helping the defenders because they work super hard. So it's only fair for us forwards to get back and help them as well. So probably tracking back.
Was that a big change as you were growing up? Obviously, in all the different systems you played in, was that a huge difference for you in the last couple of years? The defensive side of the side of the game as an attacking player.
Yes, I would say so. I'm super offensive minded. I just want to go at my defender. I want to score. I want to get you off balance. But a lot of credit goes to Hack and Critch for showing me how to get back and defensively. And knowing that it's just not offense, it's defense as well. So to do that and getting better, I can still get better, but I think I'm improving, and a lot of credit goes to those two because they still keep on me about it. They yell at me about it, which I love about. So, yeah.
Mykhi, kind of mentioning that improvement. Do you think starting the year with City 2, with the year that City 2 is having, even compared to last year and previous years where the team obviously was one of the best in the conference, but with where they are this year, does it feel like that's kind of been part of the process too, that you've had this team success with City 2, now you can kind of bring that to the first team?
Yeah, I think it's a majority of both teams, to be honest with you. I think I can learn my game off of my City 2 teammates as long as the first team as well. I do think that both of them as well make me a better player on and off the field. So I think it's a combination of both, really, of what I can kind of pick out and see. So
is it a little bittersweet then that you get pulled up? So all this success is rewarded with your first team getting more minutes, but also with the success that City 2 is having in their playoff run. Is it a little bit bittersweet to be spending more time with the first team?
Again, I honestly just enjoy the time that I have up there. I just have fun, really. I don't think about it a lot. I just go out there and play, have fun, and do my thing, really. So.
Speaking about having fun, things have been obviously you've gotten a lot of chances this year in different situations. You got to play against an EPL team. Obviously, I know for a guy like you who started becoming a big soccer fan at 5 years old, I'm sure there's been a lot of times where you've gotten to watch EPL teams and had that dream about being against them one-on-one. And obviously, it was just a friendly. One day it'll hopefully be a regular season match. But what was that like for you?
Super surreal, to be honest. It was super fun. Definitely a different level of play. They were super good with their first touch forward. I couldn't really predict what they were doing. But overall, it was just super fun to play and watch them. So nothing but joy out there. Hopefully one day I'll be able to make it there, but it was super fun as well to see what they do and see what the different levels are really and competing against them and see what I have to do to make that next step.
And so what did you learn? I mean, you just talked about the first touch, the fact that you couldn't predict what they were doing. What were the biggest lessons you took away from that match about, for you as a guy who wants to be a player in Europe one day, how do you get better? How do you get to that level?
I honestly think that it's just all mental. Just never letting your defender know, your next move. The guy that I was on was named Matty Cash, and he just, every time he got the ball, he went left or he went right, sometimes went backwards, but it was never just right, or left. He just kept mixing it up, and it just kept me I don't know what to do because he was so good at it. So I think it's just keeping your defender on his toes, not knowing what the next step is going to be.
Guys, that's something unique to what you've experienced against Aston Villa. Obviously, in the academy and coming up, you faced high-level teams before, but just with that, is it just kind of the mentality of being a Premier League player that is kind of the difference?
I mean, yeah, but also I think I mean, I think it's a mixture of both a little bit. I think it's mentality, and I also think it's if you're willing to do the work as well. So I think it's a bit of both, and that comes with the EPLs too. Like you can't just have all mental but not be willing to work. You have to have both. So I think it's a mixture of both leagues, really.
Is it that like you can't really take a play off necessarily? Is that like a good reminder there?
Exactly.
Yeah, you take a play off against those guys, they'll be streaming past you pretty quickly. And one of the things you talked about there, the left-right factor. We've talked a lot about the sides that people are playing on and things like that. Obviously, strong left-footed player for you. You play so strongly on that left side. For me, the way that I was introduced to like European soccer was all those inverted wingers that the Dutch team had. So I see a guy who scores goals and is left-footed. My first thought process is, makes sense to play on the right side. So can you break down for me why, as a left-footed player who does like to score goals, why you are so comfortable on that flank where you necessarily aren't getting inside under your strong foot?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, when I get the ball on the wide flank, I'm inside the 18. It's just I only need a foot of space to hit it. So I just take my one touch to the side of me. I see the open thread and I just shoot it, and I see the corner, I pick it out, and then sometimes I bury it, sometimes I miss, but it's just another chance I can get. Or it could just be a touch down the line, early service, and then it's a cross for one of my teammates for a tap in as well. Also, if I want to cut in, I can just hit it like outside of my foot as well. But it's okay. I love it, honestly. I think it's a lot of strengths because I don't have to cut in. I can just go down the line and just hit it as hard as I can, and one of my teammates will be there. Or shoot.
I was going to say, is there kind of a players naturally, I think, with because their inverted wingers are more popular than they ever used to be, and so teams maybe are sitting on you wanting to cut inside, and because of that, you can naturally always just get to the byline and create those crosses for your player, and for your teammates, and then you're using your strong foot there, and like you said, it's just you can control your positioning if you do want to be the shooter. Does it kind of actually give you an advantage over how defenses play you a lot now?
Yeah, I like to use my body feint a lot. I like to manipulate my body to where he might think I'm going inside and I go back outside. Sometimes I do go inside. Sometimes I just hit it at the outside of my foot. So it's kind of I take it as an advantage. I see the open lane and I take it because, I mean, I can always, it goes out for a corner kick, that's fine, or else it gets through him and it's a possible chance for the goal. So,
guys, that's something that you've had to kind of work on as you're facing bigger competition of just like where to find those spaces, how to find that space opening up.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say in MLS, they honestly do give you a little bit more respect in the league because a lot of players are talented in that league. So when I do get the ball, I can see that there might be an early cross on, or I can take my defender on 1v1. So it's actually very fun to do that. So, yeah.
You've talked a lot about Hack and Critch. Obviously, you've been coached by both of those guys a lot over the last few years. Just for each one of those guys, with Hack especially over this last half season, and with Critch, going into last year, what are the biggest things they've changed about the game? You've talked a lot about the mental side of things, but if you can hone in on maybe a couple of coaching points that like change your game and help you get ready from a City 2 player to an MLS player. From Hack and Critch, do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, a few. They've always told me to be confident on the ball, to take my defender on. If I mess up, it's okay to keep going, to lift up other players as well, and how I can make the field better for my players, like for my teammates. So I would say majority being confident, keep going at my defender, because that's what I'm here for and that's what I'm good at. So I think it's just then giving me confidence, really. And they see I mess up, but they're always on the sideline telling me, like, it's okay, keep going. And then it gives me more confidence, and I think it gives other people around the field more confidence to keep going.
Mykhi, seeing Critchley in those different roles this year, obviously, like him from the academy roles, but then seeing him with City 2 at the start of the year, seeing him as a head coach with the first team. Has there been a difference in him from previous years to now, but even from when he took over for City 2 to with the last couple of matches he's had with the first team? Have you noticed?
To be honest, I think Critch stays very true to himself. He's a very good person off the field and a very good coach on the field. I think he shows great intensity. I think he shows us good ways to go to goal. I think he shows us how to be compact as a team and to be together as a team on and off the field as well. So I've noticed that since the academy days. He's always there to cheer us on. He's always there to lift us up every time we lose or win. He's always telling us that there's something we can get better at, and that's what I love about him. So he's always stayed true to himself, and that's one thing I really love about him.
Has that continuity of having him there, like for your big minutes now, having him be the one that you're kind of talking to about it, has that been helpful, just giving you an easier time transitioning to being with the first team?
Yeah, it definitely helps because he's been my coach since the academy, and he knows how I play. He knows my strengths and he knows my weaknesses. So it's definitely a positive on my end that he's the coach right now.
It's not just scoring in a City SC jersey. Also, you've had some call-ups to the U19 United States men's national team. You scored a goal in Spain. I believe that was I'm blanking on which one of the tournaments it was right now. You scored one of the goals in Spain. You've had a couple different runs with the United States men's national team. What is it like for you, to get to see your name on those call-up sheets?
It's an honor, to be honest. It's an honor for this, that I get to represent this club here, but then go represent it for the USA. I think it shows a lot of character, and I just love it, to be honest. It's an opportunity that I can do to express myself with the national team as well. So every time I score, I play good. It shows a good feedback for City. So I think it's an honor, to be honest.
So I know you had 2 trips to Spain, I think, and one to Japan as well. You scored that first goal you did score. Were you able to get a souvenir ball or anything like that? Like, if that is the first goal you scored for one of the United States men's national team, is that a keepsake or anything like that?
No, it wasn't a keep. It was pretty cool at the moment, but I knew I had to keep going and playing. So, but no, I didn't get to keep anything. Just a friendly game against Japan. So it was pretty cool that I scored, but I didn't get to keep anything, sadly.
Yeah, we'll wait for the first one in a match, and we'll do big things for that one. Speaking of that, I know you have a lot of ambition, and you've talked a lot about what's on in the future for you. Obviously, you're a big soccer fan, have been for a long time. When you talk about growing as a player, are there any pros you watch currently in the game that maybe not emulate your game after, because you don't want to make those comparisons, but guys you watch that you enjoy, that you pick little things from them when you see highlights, anything like that? Any players that jump out?
Yeah. So one of the kids are actually my age, Lamine Yamal. I watch him. He's pretty good. He's also a lefty, so that's pretty cool to watch him. And then I do love watching Dennis Bouanga as well. Mm-hmm. I think he's very good. And then a player that kind of reminds me of myself is Leroy Sané a little bit. He's just fast winger. He doesn't do a lot of moves, but he just gets by his defender a lot. So I think of myself as him as well, or try to create my game off of him.
Sané, a lot of that is just like being in the right position at the right time too. Is that kind of how you think of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I try my best too. So.
Those are all really good names, and I know any teams. Is there been any teams in Europe? I know you don't want to box yourself in, but anyone that you really glommed onto when you were a kid, when you were starting to watch the European side?
When I was younger, I was a Ronaldo fan, so I loved Madrid. So he was my favorite player, but I started to grow up a little bit, mature a little bit, and I love Man City. So I like Phil Foden a lot as well. So I'd say I'm a Man City fan.
It's a good club to be a fan of. You talked a little bit about the toughness with the size that you have to face. Heck, you talked about Denny Bouanga. There's a lot of defenders on your team who know what it's like to go against Denny Bouanga. Who has been the toughest guy since you started training with the first team from the defensive side when you're going up against him mano a mano in these runs? Who's the toughest defender for you to face off in a City uniform?
In practice or in a game?
In practice.
Oh, in practice. To be honest, I hate going against Henry Kessler. He's just very strong. All of them, honestly, are very good. But, yeah, I would say Henry's probably one of the hardest ones to go against. He's very tall and very aggressive, and he's very good. But, again, all of them are very good. So, anyone I go against is definitely going to be a challenge. So, yeah.
It seems like that training environment is pretty intense and competitive as well. Has that been something that you've had to adjust to since getting in there on a more regular basis?
Yeah, for sure. I do have to adjust to it, but I love it as well. It's an opportunity to get to play with them. So I try to just learn and put my head down and grind.
I think they like the competition. It definitely seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You started training with the first team. This will be our last thing. You've been calling up for the first team. You've been training with them since times last year. Just compare yourself to the Mykhi that started with City 2 at 17 years old. You're going to turn 19 soon. You've got 2 years of playing with men on a regular basis. How much better have you become as a player from your own perspective?
I think a lot, to be honest. Beginning when I was 17 years old, I wasn't I want to say I was very strong or very smart or how to really use my body. But then like working out every day, seeing what I can do on the field, seeing huddle clips, and then going into practice every day with the mentality that I'm going to get better. I think I grew as a player a lot, and that also goes to actually my coach Bobby, and then it goes to Critch as well. So.
Now, have you always had the vertical? That's something that jumps out a lot when we watch you. The vertical's insane. Has that always been there, or have you added a couple inches with the strength training of a professional squad as well?
When I was younger, I played basketball, so I think I'm pretty good at timing in the air. But yeah, I don't know. All I can say is I played basketball, so maybe that's what helped was the practices.
It definitely hasn't hurt, that's for sure, Mykhi. Thank you so much for your time today. Obviously, we know you got a busy schedule. Thanks for joining us here on Boots on the Ground, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that, of course, is City winger Mykhi Joyner, newly added to the squad just about a week ago. Justin, we'll close out the podcast with just a couple of final thoughts. He has been incredible. There were some people who, in my opinion, it was crazily criticized his game against Vancouver, which I thought was insane. What were your thoughts on what we've seen from Mykhi in a first team jersey so far this season?
Yeah, I think you see in that game especially, and I think people maybe have that thought because he was pretty involved, and I think that case is important for him, for a player like him, where I think if you compare that to some of his like first City 2 minutes to some of his first team minutes, being engaged and being involved on both sides of the ball. Something I asked Critch about afterward, just because that was something that stood out to me. And then, of course, unfortunately, has the VAR dilemma at the end of the match. But yeah, I think just the fact that he got in there and mixed it up right away, I think is a big sign of just where he is confidence-wise.
Yeah, the fact that we didn't ask him about that should probably show you how much we clock the importance of a moment that I think everyone involved is going, that's not real. It's we shouldn't pretend like it was real or that anyone made a mistake. If you have to close on a player, you should be able to run near enough to them that their foot gets close when the ball's not even in the flipping box in the first place. So yeah, I thought he had a fantastic game. Again, we focus on the dribbling, we focus on the shooting and scoring. Those things are definitely there with Mykhi Joyner. The fact that he's focusing so much on the mental side of things, though, I think shows his maturity. And that's what I'm really impressed by Mykhi going forward. And that's why I think the sky's the limit for this kid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think like young players are going to experience those moments, and you have to be like okay with letting them experience that. And
heck, you're not winning right now. So if they make some mistakes, there's no problem with there.
Okay.
That wraps up this episode of Boots on the Ground. Just being upfront with people, this is a very different background than that is behind me for the first half of the podcast. That's because we recorded Mykhi a little bit earlier in the day, and then me and Justin came back here to finish the podcast tonight for you guys. So that's why things might look a little bit different on both our sides. Not some weird kind of change here, not movie magic, just a complete change in the day and a timing factor. So thank you so much.
If you just didn't say anything, just don't say anything at all.
Yeah, I like pulling back the curtain and letting them in. That's the entire point of this podcast, Justin, is we're pulling the curtains back. Right. We're letting people in on the things. We're getting the interviews from Mykhi. We're breaking down moments in really in-depth ways. That's the point of Boots on the Ground. Justin Horneker, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. Before we go, tell everyone how they can follow you and follow your work.
Yeah, I am an MLS Matchday writer, so you can find that work on MLSsoccer.com. But the work I do for City, I write the City Scene newsletter for STL Magazine. If you go to stlmag.com, you can find that newsletter every Tuesday. I publish an article every Wednesday. The newsletter gets out. And then my Substack, Talking Soccer, that's where I have my training notebook as well as just other MLS and NWSL content as well. So
there it is. Justin Horneker. Check him out again, MLSsoccer.com and STLmag.com. For Justin, I'm Matthew Rocchio. This has been Boots on the Ground on STL Sports Central. Have a great rest of your night, St. Louis.